What's up guys, and welcome to this review of Wonder Woman 1984. It's the 80s, 1984 to be precise if you didn't realise from the title. Diana Prince, Wonder Woman, has been living a quiet life, let's say, without her boyfriend Chris Pine being around. One day, a mysterious stone comes into everyone's life. Maxwell Lord shows up as well. He wants this stone. Turns out this stone can grant people wishes, and well, once everyone realizes that, chaos ensues. So that's all I want to say about the story just now, because wow, where do I start with this film? I enjoyed most of this film, but I cannot in any way, shape or form say that it's good. This is not a good film. This is actually a bit of a mess, but at times enjoyable. It's not... If you remember Aquaman, if you've seen Aquaman, Aquaman threw everything it had into that. It was bonkers, it was crazy, and it was very fun and enjoyable because of that. This isn't bonkers, this isn't crazy, at least not in the same way. Aquaman was bonkers and crazy in that they were doing everything they could to entertain us. This one, it's bonkers and crazy because so much of it just doesn't make sense. So much of it is so bizarre and cheesy and corny. And some of it works, a lot of it doesn't. But at the end of the day, like I said, I did enjoy most of this. So it is set in the 80s, and you can tell it's set in the 80s because everything looks like the 80s. But it also looks kind of modern at the same time. It's really bizarre. They haven't quite nailed the 80s look or aesthetic, I don't think. And there's no real purpose for it to be set in the 80s either. It doesn't play into the plot. Yeah, there's a little mention here about like nuclear warfare and deterrence and all that, but it's not a huge, big deal. It's not something that keeps coming up. They're not referencing the 80s over and over again. So why set it in the 80s rather than the modern day? I don't know. But the other thing is that this film's clearly inspired by films of the 70s and 80s. It feels like a superhero film from the 70s and 80s. There are a lot of references and hints and subtle remarks about like Superman 3 and Superman 4, The Quest for Peace. It feels like a superhero film in that vein, in that it is cheesy, it is corny, but this has a huge budget, and it just feels like a huge budget version of those films. The way that the story is told, the way that everything plays out, the over-the-top villain, the cheesiness, the campiness of it all feels like a 70s and 80s superhero film. Or the classic Wonder Woman TV show, which is also another clear reference point for this film. And if that was all intentional, then good on them, it works. They've absolutely nailed that. But it doesn't make for something in 2021 that's good or great. There's a reason those things don't get made now. It's because they were very much a thing of their time period, let's say. You can't make a 70s or 80s movies now because we're not in the 70s or 80s. We've moved on from that. We've got new ideals, we've got new standards, we've got new ways of doing things. And it's fine to pay homage, it's fine to reference this stuff, but this film does feel like it was made 30 years ago, just with modern technology. And it's weird. So I was talking about how a lot of things don't make sense. There's a lot of really just bizarre things in here, from storytelling to character moments, to choices made by characters, to things they're saying and doing. One example is, there's a scene where they go from Washington to Egypt in a fighter jet. A fighter jet, by the way, which is designed for small flights. A fighter jet which, for some reason, was fully fueled and was stolen from a museum. Why would there be a fully fueled fighter jet in a museum? I mean, what the hell's going on there? Patty Jenkins, I believe her dad was a pilot, and I think that's why Patty Jenkins films often have references to pilots and soldiers and stuff like that, because she lived in that world. She has a lot of references to that. How did she not like veto this? How did she not like point this out and say, oh no, that wouldn't be possible. This jet cannot fly that distance. It's weird. And it's not the only example, it's just the one that I want to point out. but there are lots of little jumps like this, there are a lot of little moments like this which just do not make sense, which break the realism of this world, because it's just not possible for this stuff to happen. And a lot of the answers to this, oh, it's magic. That's what a lot of the stuff resolves to in this film, is that when something doesn't make sense, it's, oh, magic, yeah, magic did it. It's like, yeah, that's not gonna fly by. Yeah, you're not gonna be able to use that for everything. But they try. I'll give them that, they damn well try. And because of this, there was a lot of things that happen in this film, a lot of things that are said in this film, a lot of elements of this film that just lack explanation. Because the only explanation they bother to give them is, it's magic. But the film does have action scenes in there. The action scenes are not great by any means. I don't think any of them are bad either. They're just okay. It's bizarre because I don't think the action scenes are the highlight of this film, which is weird for an action film. That's essentially what this film is trying to be. It's an action film, and yet the action scenes aren't the highlight. In fact, there are only 4 in the entire film, and the film's 2.5 hours long, which is, by the way, far too long. This film dragged quite a bit because it's just, they needed another edit. They needed to go through, cut things out, they needed to trim things down, combine and merge certain scenes and moments together. And hell, I've even talked about how there are jumps. The flight from Washington to Egypt, for example. There's clearly a scene cut there because we don't see them land in Egypt. We don't see them leave the fighter jet. Instead, the first thing we see when they're in Egypt is, oh, they're in a van or some sort of vehicle now. How did they get that? Where did they land the jet? What happened to the jet? How did they even get into Egypt without getting shot down or anything? It's weird. So there feels like there's certain scenes and moments that are being cut out, and certain scenes and moments that should have been cut out that haven't been cut out. The film feels like a director's cut. It feels like it's went through one pass through of the edit, that they've just assembled everything and then slapped on some music, and they haven't actually fine-tuned it. So another pass through with the edit I think could have helped this film, but that's not gonna fix everything that's wrong with this film. So there are some jokes in here, there are some humorous moments in this film as well. They don't work. If you've seen the trailer for this film, all the jokes and all the humorous moments are in the trailer, and they actually work better in the trailer than they do in the film. A lot of them kind of fall flat here. Maybe it is because I've already seen them in the trailer, I don't know. But a lot of the jokes and humor just missed the mark a little bit. There are also attempts at inspiration. This film is trying to be inspiring. They're trying to make Wonder Woman this iconic character. She's already an iconic character, but a lot of the cheesiness, a lot of the campiness, a lot of the jokes and the humor and the presentation of everything surrounding the characters and the story in this prevents the inspiring moments from really hitting the mark. So there's a moment in the film where she's learning to fly, and I thought it was really cool. I think it was really trying to hit that mark, but it just didn't quite get there because there were certain moments, like one I'm going to get to, which I think is the absolute worst moment of this film. There are certain moments that just kept coming to mind that prevented the inspiring moments from truly taking off. No pun intended, because I'm talking about her flying. But let's talk about the worst thing about this film. A terrible, terrible decision that I can't believe actually made it into the film. That actually destroys the character of Wonder Woman and makes me look at this character in a completely new light. She rapes someone. Yeah, you have not misheard me. She rapes someone. The main character, the main hero, the hero of this film commits a crime and gets no punishment for it. And it's the worst, one of the worst types of crimes you can ever commit. Now here's the thing, this character is supposed to be inspiring. It's supposed to be someone that young girls and young children look up to and think, oh wow, I would love to be like that. That's someone who I can look up to as inspiration to live my life by. That's great. And they try to give her flaws. She's definitely a flawed character. That's great too, because you don't want your hero to be perfect. You don't want them to be flawless, because that's unrealistic. If you're trying to striving to be a realistic, perfect individual, then you're really putting that person on a pedestal and you're never gonna get there, so it's not gonna work. So you don't want that. You don't want your hero to be completely perfect and flawless. However, the flaw that they give her is one of the most unforgivable, damaging flaws anyone can ever do. So I'm just totally shocked that this happened. Why? At what point did anyone think that her raping someone would be a good idea? And just to clarify what happens here, Steve Trevor comes back from the dead. Kind of. His, what's the word I'm looking for? His personality, his soul maybe, I don't know, takes over the body of a random guy and they rekindle their relationship. This random guy, by the way, we don't know what happens to him while Steve is in his body. It seems like he's just trapped in his body, maybe. We don't know, it's not explained fully. But either way, Steve is very much not, this is very much not Steve's body, this is this guy's body. He's robbed him of his life, he's eaten all his food, he's taken all his clothes. They're actually making fun of his clothes and his lifestyle and his house and all that lot, which is rubbing in the wound again. And then Wonder Woman has sex with him, without the guy giving any verbal or visual consent whatsoever. Yeah, Steve is giving his consent, but of course he is. But then it's not really his consent to give because it's not his body. So yeah, I don't know. This scene I thought was just awful and it should not have been in the film at all. At least not without some further dive into this character whose body they're actually using. And I cannot believe that they put this in the film. And then throughout the rest of the film, they're constantly trying to make Wonder Woman inspiring. They're treating her as if she's a hero. They're treating it as if this just didn't happen. And the problem is, it did happen. And it's unforgivable. And there are no repercussions for it. There's no explanation for it. So watching the rest of this film, I kind of did not like Wonder Woman. This actually made me dislike the main character, and not in a good way. That being said, Gal Gadot I do think is great as Wonder Woman. I do think she's nailing the performance. She's definitely nailing the look of the character. I think she's cool. There's a classical, sophisticated element to her as well. She's not just about good looks. It's not just about fighting the bad guys. She does have brains. She does have smarts. She's a fully dynamic, full, three-dimensional character, and I really like that. Chris Pine, however, this time around, he's playing the comic relief. But like I said, the jokes and humour, they don't really work, they kind of fall flat. Nothing to do with him, I think it's the material and the direction. The problem is that Chris Pine's character in this film is not the same character as from the first film. Chris Pine's character in the first film, he was a soldier, he was a pilot, he was a fighter. He came in, he was explaining everything to Wonder Woman, he was confident, he knew the status quo, he knew how things worked. And that here, he's just a bit of a goofy idiot. I get it, he's in a different time period, but that can't explain all of it. In fact, so much so, he just is a complete and utter idiot. Then you got Pedro Pascal as Maxwell Lord. I think he's great, in fact. Some people will probably look at this and think, oh, he's overacting, or he's going too bonkers and crazy, or this is too cheesy and corny, but I think it actually works really well. I think he's clearly having a ball of a time. I think he's having a lot of fun. I think he's the most energetic, entertaining part of this whole film. And I think he's a really well developed character. He does have motivations, he does have understandable, believable motivations, but then at the same time there's this relationship with his son which is coming into play. There's actually layers and depth to him, and it's Pedro Pascal, so it's just a great performance. On top of that, yeah, he is hamming it up a little bit, but I think that's actually much more saying about the character rather than about him. And I think this character is a very extravagant, very in-your-face kind of character, so him hamming it up, him being a bit cheesy and corny and very loud and brash and in your face, I think actually works really well. And I really liked his performance here. The wig that he's wearing, not so much. Then you got Kristen Wiig as Cheetah. A good performance. I cannot fault the performance whatsoever. However, I don't think this character had to be in the film. This character could have been any archaeologist or scientist. She served one purpose only, and that was to hand over the stone to Maxwell Lord and to befriend Wonder Woman. That's it. About halfway through this film, her character becomes redundant. She doesn't have to be there, she doesn't need to play any part in this film, but instead she's still hanging around, and when it becomes clear that what she's achieved from this stone, what she's achieved from the film so far might end up being taken away, that's when she starts to turn into the villain that we know her as Cheetah. And here's the thing about Cheetah. If you've seen the trailer for this film, you've seen Cheetah in this film. She's only in one scene. bit of a spoiler, but she is only in that one scene, and the CGI and special effects to portray Cheetah are not good. So why go that far? Why have this one scene? Why throw this character in there just for the sake of one scene? It doesn't make sense. You could have put this character aside. You could have had Kristen Wiig playing a completely different character, like I said, an archaeologist or a scientist, and get rid of the Cheetah stuff altogether and save Cheetah for another time maybe. But yeah, it just feels a bit of a wasted opportunity. But like I said, Kristen Wiig, I do like her performance. Yeah, it is a good role for her, and I like her in this role. But in relation to this, it's worth saying that the origins of her character are a little unoriginal. It's very similar to Guy Pearce's character from Iron Man 3 or Jamie Foxx's character from Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2, in that they are a nerdy, geeky, awkward character who then gradually becomes more confident and more villainous throughout. So we've seen that character arc before. Kristen Wiig, like I said, great performance. She does her own little spin on it, I think, but it is a little too similar to what we've already seen. But let's talk a bit more about the production. The CGI, sometimes the CGI is okay, sometimes the CGI is bad. Some of the special effects, some of the action scenes do not work at all. There's a lot of wire work, there's a lot of weird special effects and CGI moments that really hit the mark. It felt like they needed to put a little more time and budget into them. It feels like at 2.5 hours long, they had to maybe stretch out the budget a little bit, I don't know. But yeah, a lot of the action scenes were a little dull, nothing bad in there exactly, but nothing in there that wowed me, nothing that's really thought, wow, that's really well done. So yeah, it's a little odd. It does the job, let's say, but you're not going to be wowed by this. It's not going to be getting any awards from the CGI or special effects. Visually, the film's a good looking one. There's a lot of use of bright colours, and light and darkness works really well, and some of the shots look very photorealistic, some of the shots are very stylish and artistic. Yeah, it's a good looking film. The score from Hans Zimmer, the guy who apparently retired from superhero films only to do a bunch of them after, well, he's back, he's doing the score here. I think the score is actually really good. There are some instances where he's used unoriginal songs, in that they're songs made by other people and they're inserted in this film. It's a little odd, but they work for the most part. But yeah, it's a good Hans Zimmer score. I think it's well balanced. It's not like a Christopher Nolan film where it's booming over the top. It actually is at the right volume level. Editing, I've already talked about. The editing's a little iffy. It needed another pass through. It needed to go through with Patty Jenkins and the editor and to just trim certain scenes down and maybe fill in certain gaps and cut down certain scenes altogether. The editing did need another go through, because at 2.5 hours long, this film felt like it was 4 hours, and it felt way too long. There just wasn't any need for it to be that long. But anyway, that's my thoughts on Wonder Woman 1984. I enjoyed most of it. There are things I really liked, like Pedro Pascal. There are things I absolutely hated, like Wonder Woman raping a guy. And yeah, this film is enjoyable. If you like superhero films, if you like the first Wonder Woman, this is very different from the first Wonder Woman, by the way. The first Wonder Woman was very grounded, had like a really serious tone to it because it was in the war. This one being in the 80s, it tries to go a bit more chirpy and cheerful and quirky, and it goes all campy and corny and cheesy, and yeah, tonally, this is very different from the first one. So I couldn't even recommend this to fans of the first Wonder Woman film. It feels like it's almost a reboot now that I'm thinking about it, which is odd. It's much more closer to Aquaman, but where Aquaman was trying to be just bonkers and bizarre, and this one does go for more campy and cheesy. So yeah, if you like Aquaman, you might like this. If you like the old-fashioned superhero films of the 70s and 80s, you might like this. That's the best comparison I can make in terms of the tone, in terms of the humour, and the way in which this film was made. But ultimately, I don't think I would recommend this film. I think there's a very small niche audience out there who is going to love this. But I don't think that's the audience that the film wants to get. But anyway, Wonder Woman 1984, I enjoyed most of it. If you've liked this review, you can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at @the_Grant_Burton, but most importantly, subscribe to my channel to get more content like this. Seriously, please subscribe if you like this, and until next time, that's it for now, so thanks for watching.